What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I am the Renegade JJ Williams, and today I'm going to be talking about from 2014, Get On Up, starring Chadwick Boseman, Dan Aykroyd, Viola Davis, Craig Robinson, Jill Scott, and more. Thank you, everybody, for joining me yet again today here as we do another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, still celebrating Black music here on Black History Month. And this film was interesting because it was delivered in a non-linear narrative. And I'm going to try to cover the events chronologically, timeline-wise, instead of the order that the movie covered it. That way it's a little bit more of a coherent story. There were also quite a few fourth wall breaks, and I found that very entertaining because it's one thing when a character like Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, or even Ferris Bueller back in the 80s, or Zach Morris on TV. But for a historical person to do it a few times in a biopic definitely caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it. Now, in 1939, young James lives with his mother and father in Augusta, Georgia. They live in poverty, and his father is abusive. One day, his mother is fed up. She just leaves to go become a prostitute. And his father joins the army, decides to leave James with his aunt, who runs a brothel. Now, he's fascinated with the fast-paced shout music at the local church, which would later inspire his style of singing and entertaining. In 1949, James is arrested and thrown in jail for stealing a suit, of all things. Now, while James is in prison, Bobby Bird and his gospel group come to perform, and James is just inspired by the performance. After the performance, he speaks to Bobby a little bit, and James impresses Bobby with his vocal abilities. So much so that Bobby finds out that if he had family in the area, he could get out on parole because all he stole was a suit. So Bobby's family agrees to supervise James's parole. And James ends up becoming the lead singer of Bobby's gospel group, the Gospel Starlighters. And the group's sound slowly begins to shift from gospel towards more of an R&B sound. When Little Richard one night takes a break from performing his show, James and the group take advantage and jump up on the stage. James introduces the group not as the Gospel Starlighters, but as the Famous Flames. And they perform a version of Caledonia. After the show, Little Richard and James conversate a little bit, and Richard warns him about the White Devil. James meets and marries Velma Warren, and together they have a son named Teddy. In 1955, Ralph Bass signs the Famous Flames to Keene Records, and they record their first single, Please, Please, Please. Now, when the single is done being pressed and they present it to the band, here's your first record, it's credited to James Brown and his Famous Flames. The band is understandably hurt about this. And when Ben and the label executive, Sid Nathan, decide they're going to make the band salaried employees, basically the equivalent of studio musicians, they get furious and they quit the band. Now, by the year 1962, Bobby and James have reformed the band. And despite warning from the record company about hefty costs of recording a live album, James wants no part of what they're trying to tell him. He knows that he's got a unique sound, a unique style, and it all just comes together in a live performance. A James Brown live performance is unlike anything that you've ever seen or heard. So despite warnings from the record company, James finances the live album himself, live at the Apollo, and becomes an enormous success. After James is done performing his show at the Apollo, he's approached by his mother, who apologizes to him for leaving him all those years ago. He tells her that he wants nothing to do with her. Stay out of my life. You stayed out of it this long. Stay out of my life. But like a good son, he does give her some financial support. In 1964, James is about to appear on The Tammy Show. And the show producers want the brand new act, the Rolling Stones, to close out the show. They're hoping for similar success to what the Beatles had when they appeared on Ed Sullivan. And the producers think that if they present this other British rock band as their headliner, they'll get more advertising, better ratings, whatever. So James goes out there and he kills it. Puts on a fantastic performance and is basically like, follow that. Just upstages the Stones completely. Around this time, James also begins to pay young radio disc jockeys in order to avoid promoter fees when it comes to promoting his concerts. He feels that if he gives a young DJ a few dollars on the side, it's cheaper than paying a promoter. He also divorces his first wife, Velma, and marries Deidre Jenkins. And he begins treating his band like lackeys, fining them, calling practices on their days off, and often berating them when any of them dared to ask a question and question his authority. In 1968, when the Martin Luther King riots break out, James convinces the mayor of Boston to not cancel his show, basically saying, would you rather want all of them on the streets potentially rioting or contained in one place where they can be entertained? And although the tensions are high that evening between the citizens and the police, he's able to calm the audience down when tensions start to arise. He even issues a plea for unity. He ends up recording on the heels of that the song Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and pitches an idea to Lyndon Johnson, the president at the time, for him to go to Vietnam to do USO shows for the troops in support. And the plane carrying James and some of his band members, now he can't take his whole band like he normally would. If I remember correctly, they said he could only bring 6 people. So the plane that's carrying James and his few band members is shot at because they're in a war zone. Blows an engine and nearly crashes, but the plane touches down safely and everything is okay. The band performs the show as scheduled. Performance is a success. The troops respond amazingly to James and his performance and his band. And now James begins to enter a period of turmoil. First, his manager, Ben, dies of a heart attack. Then he gets investigated by the IRS for back taxes after starting several businesses. His band presents a list of demands to him in order to be treated more fairly, and James wants no part of that. He feels that they're kind of, starting a mutiny, and as a result, he stands his ground. All of them quit except for Bobby. However, after performing a 1971 concert in Paris, Bobby tells James that he thinks he wants to record another solo album. And at this, James feels betrayed by Bobby. So Bobby ends up quitting the band then. James's son, Teddy, his oldest son, dies in a car accident. And then we jump ahead 17 years to 1988. And James is strung out on PCP and goes to visit one of his businesses. Next door to his business is a seminar that's being held. And he discovers that someone from the seminar used his private bathroom. He feels violated, How dare somebody use James Brown's private bathroom? So he goes to his truck and he gets a shotgun. He goes into the seminar, kind of wielding the gun. The gun accidentally goes off, and the police start to come. James forgives the person that utilized the restroom, jumps into his truck, and starts to flee the scene. He's able to evade some officers, and he even crashes through a barricade before he ends up getting arrested and locked up. 1993 rolls around. James is out of jail, and he sees Bobby for the first time in 20 years. James gives him tickets to the night's show at the Omni in Atlanta. And as James takes the stage that evening, he begins to reflect on the cost that he's paid for his success and all the stuff that's led up to that point. He sees Bobby and his wife out in the audience, and he performs the song "Try Me," which just moves Bobby and his wife to tears. I was thoroughly entertained by this film. And this is where kind of the compare and contrast comes in, because I wasn't really I didn't grow up on the music of James Brown, much like I didn't with the music of Ray Charles, and I discussed Ray the other day. I'm not sure why I was more entertained with this film than I was with Ray. Maybe it was the fourth wall breaks, but I don't think it would be something so simple as that. If you remember, I said that the first half hour or so of Ray had me bored. From the jump, I was focused on James Brown. Maybe some of that had to do with Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of him, because he's definitely a very charismatic individual. I mean, anybody that's ever seen him as T'Challa, the Black Panther, can definitely attest to that. When he is on the screen, he commands your attention. Same thing in Marshall, which I talked about earlier this month. When he was on the screen as Thurgood Marshall, he commanded your attention. When he was on screen as James Brown, he commanded my attention. For some reason, Jamie Foxx's performance as Ray didn't command my attention that same way. Both Ray Charles and James Brown are R&B soul artists. Both of them had their starts in like the 50s and 60s. So they come from similar time periods of music. Both of them have a few songs of theirs that I know. There's not a whole lot of James Brown music that I really like. Just like there's not a whole lot of Ray Charles music that, are favorite songs of mine. I think what it came down to for me was the performance of Chadwick Boseman versus the performance of Jamie Foxx. Maybe there's a little bit of bias due to the fact that we lost Chadwick last year. And so seeing him as anything other than T'Challa, I immediately want to like soak it up and take in some of his other works. Whereas Jamie Foxx is still with us, still churning out pretty decent movies for the most part. I'm not really sure what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but those are just a few of the things when I compare and contrast as to why I think I preferred Get On Up to Ray. When it comes to my rating, I'm going to give 3.5 out of 5 stars to Get On Up. It almost made 4 stars, but I feel like 3.5 out of 5. That's an honest, fair rating for me out of this. Maybe if it was an artist that I was more of a fan of, it would have been higher rated. But like with Ray, I said that if that first half hour hadn't been so boring to me, it would have received 3.5 out of 5 instead of 2.5 out of 5. The fact that I wasn't bored but captivated pretty much right out the jump from this one, I think is what gives it that rating that Ray could have achieved had I not been bored by the beginning parts. Let's get out there, get those hashtags trending on social media. Hashtag Casa D18 Studios, hashtag Renegades Reviews, hashtag Renegade Returns, and of course the ever popular hashtag Shenanigans. We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag StatboyApproved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today. Don't forget to get out there. Go to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network, just like the commercial told you. Get you your Renegade JJ Williams shirt. Get you your Dad's Not Always on Wrestling shirt. Get you your Stat Boy Sports Bar shirt. Your shirts for Meachamania, Talk Wrestling, the Back to the Future inspired Jeff Meacham Network logo, the LA Kings inspired Jeff Meacham Network logo, all the official merchandise of the Jeff Meacham Network and the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood in one place. Tomorrow, right here on Renegades Reviews, exclusively on the Casa D18 Studios channel, join me as I discuss Tupac Shakur, The Untold Story, All Eyes on Me. That should be another good one to get into. That'll be our wrap up of Black music here during the Black History Month celebration. We started the Black Music celebration with the story of Notorious B.I.G. Only way I could think of to bookend it is Biggie's rival and former friend, Tupac. So make sure you tune in tomorrow right here for a brand new episode of Renegades Reviews and check that one out. Thank you for watching. Please leave your comments in the comment box below as always. I will get back to them. I appreciate you guys tuning in every single day. Those of you that have been tuning in, tell your friends. If you see a review that I do that you really like, share it. Copy the link, tweet it out, post it on your Facebook, word of mouth. Let's try and get me a few more viewers and subscribers over here, guys. I'm putting a lot of work on these things. I hope you appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and until all eyes on me tomorrow, I will see you guys next time.